Good evening, everybody. It is Tuesday night. It is time for another episode of Conversations with Commodores. And we've got a Cookeville native who you guys have not heard from in a while. I'm so glad that he has joined us and made a safe trip back from halfway across the world. Roy Williams is with us this night. Good evening, Roy. Thank you for making some time for us.
Oh, Bernard, thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, this is my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this and ever since Kenny posted that awesome picture of you from that trip that you just got back from, it's just been and those articles that you guys sent and I've posted. Man, that's some great information back then. Let's go back to then. Let's go to the fall of 1976. Coming
Okay.
out of Cookeville. What led you to come to Vanderbilt as opposed to taking your talents to some other school in the SEC or in the region?
Well, a great decision, first off, but uh, my high school coach was Ken Honey. He was a star player for the University of Tennessee, and one of his really close friends was Ken Hudgens. Ken played baseball at Tennessee, and he was the recruiting coordinator for Vanderbilt. So I got to know Coach Hudgens and visiting with him. And you know what truly, I guess, sold me on Vanderbilt was a couple of things. The people you meet when you're on a recruiting trip, number one, the players that are there that takes you around and, kind of takes care of you. And the other thing, Cookeville's 80 miles from Nashville. And I guess I wanted to play close by to my hometown so my family could see me play. And it was really a hard decision. And Jim Carlin, and a lot of people will know that name, was the head coach of the University of South Carolina, which I knew Coach Carlin and the Carlin family in Cookeville since I was a kid. And he recruited me very hard. And I went and visited to South Carolina and had a great visit. And he really, really wanted me to come there. And it was tough to tell him that I wasn't going to come. But the big key to it all was the players and the recruits that were there when I visited, and the fact that I was a little closer to home. Well, if I had gone to South Carolina, like Rogers that won the Heisman Trophy, I can't think of his first name, but
George.
George Rogers, he would have been in my class.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
You never know what decisions, what can happen one way or the other. But on behalf of Vanderbilt Commodore Nation, we're glad you chose Nashville and not.
well, I am too, and I had a high school teammate that went with me at the same time, Joey Smith. He ended up playing tight end with the Commodores, and he was there the whole time I was. So it was a good, I guess, Cookeville connection.
Well, we've had some Cookeville alums. We had Flavius on already, and we've also had, of course, Watson Brown, who's several years
Absolutely.
we know several years older than you. You and his brother Mac from Cookeville and made their way to Nashville. When you were a kid, I guess maybe elementary, maybe middle school, was Vanderbilt football, was the fact that the Browns brothers were there, did that resonate at that point, or were you still a little young
Oh,
for all?
absolutely. Watson, but more so Mac
Mm-hmm.
was my hero. Mac was number 22. I was number 22 in high school. Mac was a running back. I was a running back and, safety corner. But yeah, Mac Brown and the Brown brothers were heroes in Cookeville and in my eyes. Uh, they're 6, 7, maybe 8 years older than me. Watson's 1 year ahead of Mac. But yeah, that certainly had some influence too because I followed them coming up through grade school and junior high. And like I say, I wanted to be the same number Mac was.
Well, when Watson and Christie Hawk and that crew beat Alabama in '69, I'm just curious what kind of parade was conducted in the town of Cookeville after that game or after that season. There had to have been just big time.
Well, let me think back 1969. I was 11 years old. I can tell you exactly what I was. So, that was a big deal. And I remember somebody, I can't remember who made the comment, but they said that Vanderbilt was going to beat Alabama that day, and they did. So, it was an awesome event.
Yeah. All right.
And
We already got some.
Bear Bryant recruited me as well, and I went and visited Alabama. And of course, Bear Bryant's like I don't know, a
Football royalty.
oh, no doubt. But I can remember I was always on kickoff return team. And of course, we go out before anybody else before the games. We were playing Alabama in Nashville. Of course, Coach Bryant would come out and he'd lean against the goalpost. That was just what he did. And I never will forget. I was catching kickoffs and he walked past me. He said, "How you doing, Williams?" And I thought, man, that was great that he knew who I was.
That's fantastic. Well, I don't know your relationship or friendship well enough, Roy, to know if this is in love or throwing some shade in your direction right now. So I got to share it with you.
Okay.
Mark Matlock says, "Is that some white hair that I see?"
Yeah, Hoghead's got his share of white hair as well. There's another the bond that you develop with your friends and former players. Mark and I have stayed connected ever since we've been there with a very close friend, Bart White from Union City, that passed away from cancer about a year and a half, 2 years ago. But Mark and I did a lot of things together, being close to home. It was a pleasure, when we were, of course, a lot of us was there in the summertime, lifting weights, working out, and we've got some beautiful lakes here in the Cookeville area, and a bunch of guys would come home with me, for the weekend, and I'd just call my mom and I'd say, "Hey, I got 5 guys coming. We're staying at the house," and she was a great cook, and she, like a lot of mothers and ladies, I don't think people cook like they used to, but my mother, she loved to cook for all them big guys, Mark Matlock and Robin Giltner, Bart White. They'd all come to the house and we'd go to the lake for the weekend, and just, great memories. And that bond that we developed during that time, I feel, and I think they feel the same way, still very strong.
Well, I have said almost on every one of these episodes that to me, one of the greatest benefits of playing team sports, whether it's little league or high school or all the way up into the pros, one of the greatest benefits are those bonds, those friendships, those brothers that you develop those such close relationships with. And Roy, they just carry you for the rest of your life. And you
No,
just
absolutely.
described it beautifully, that I bet if you picked up the phone with Mark right now, you guys would fall back like had just seen each other 2 days ago.
Oh, I'd cuss him as soon as he answered the phone. You know how football guys are. I'd get my licks in before he got his, but you're exactly right. I mean, and that's another thing, my decision to go to Vanderbilt, no regrets, none at all. It was a great decision. And yes, I got a great education. The Vanderbilt diploma is priceless, in my opinion, and prepared me for business and what I've done in my career. But the friendships that came from those teams I was on is, like you say, it's lifetime.
That's I
And,
just I
and
think
we
that's
all move on and
yeah.
do our thing, and life gets in the way. You have families and you don't connect and talk as often as maybe you should, but then the time comes back around when we retire, our kids are gone, and we start getting back together, and we're still just as close as we were as when we were in school.
I love that. Love that. Let's talk about growing up in Cookeville, Tennessee. And Cookeville, for its size, has produced, I think, a disproportionately high number of fine athletes who've played in the college level and into the pros. But even before we address that part, Roy, what was life like growing up in Cookeville? How was it fun? Was it boring? Describe it for us a little bit. Set the tone.
Well, I'm gonna, obviously, you know how old I am, but I'm gonna go way back. Cookeville was a small town. had some beer joints, but of course didn't have liquor by the drink, but it was a small community, very close. Everybody knew everybody. And then Interstate 40 came through Cookeville in 1963. And of course, that opened the door to some growth and more people coming in. But, it's still what I consider or like to think of as a small community, but it's a small city now. And with the interstate and all the restaurants and liquor by the drink that came in, I can go in a lot of those restaurants on the strip next to the interstate and not know a soul. Now, being from Cookeville, there are the local owned restaurants that we go to where we do know a lot of people. But growing up in Cookeville, I mean, I can, Tennessee Tech is here in Cookeville, so we would obviously have the high school games on Friday night, and Tech would be having a home game. It's a great college town, and you'd have the parades and the homecoming parades, and just a wonderful place to grow up and live, and it still is a good place.
What is or no, not what, where is the Diane and Roy Williams table? Which restaurant has your name on it that they just know this is where y'all sit?
Spanky's.
There you go. There you go.
You go into Spanky's, they bring me a Coke, and they bring Diane what she wants. They know when we sit down. And actually, we ate there last night.
Oh, that's probably the same wait staff for years, same hostess, all that good stuff. That's
Well,
awesome.
I tell you, I've been going to Spanky's since I was probably 14. At the time, you remember foosball was really big.
Oh,
Well,
yeah, yeah.
had foosball tables, and all the kids went there and played foosball. The owner that bought the business or started the business went to Tennessee Tech and started the business when he was 22 years old. And that was probably about the time he started it. So it's been that, a kind of a gaming room. It was a sub shop. It was a pizza place. And then when liquor by the drink came to Cookeville, he started doing very well and developed more of a restaurant, home style restaurant, I guess, with special dishes that he did, and it's done very well.
For a restaurant or any establishment, particularly a locally owned one, to stay open and doing well for that many decades, that's fantastic.
And that owner, I've known him all my life, and I eat with him on Wednesday nights at Spanky's.
That's fantastic.
He still
Love
comes
it.
and hangs out.
That's so great.
But now he paid his dues. He had a little old room in the back of Spanky's where he lived for years. He lived right there.
There's a story right there that needs to be told if it hadn't already.
Right.
Is it true that every young boy growing up in Cookeville was required to play every sport of the season?
Absolutely. Back in those days, if you were a good athlete, you played basically everything. I never was a basketball player, but I played baseball all my life, played football all my life, and I ran track. When I was a sophomore in high school, we went to the state championship in baseball, and I made all state. And I kind of wish I'd tried to done both when I was at Vanderbilt. Scotty Madison did, Mike Wright did, and of course, what Vandy baseball's like today. I've got the game on right now, muted, watching them play Indiana, but baseball was really a good sport for me, and I've got a 12-year-old grandson that's playing now and doing very well, and I'm very involved in following him and doing those things. But the good athletes played everything. And I'll bring up a name that's very close to me is David Culley from Sparta, Tennessee. It's 13 miles away. Diane, my wife, and David were in the same class. She likes to tell me that she knew him before I did. But David and I were friends. He used to ride home with me all the time, but he still, or was, is still the hero of Sparta. And what an athlete.
Oh
great
God.
football player, great baseball player, great basketball player. And the smaller the communities
Mhm,
still has that mentality. And it's kind of a shame
mhm.
that some of our high school coaches want you to play just one sport. But the sports are basically year round anymore. And
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
it's fair. And I heard David Culley give a speech
Mhm,
within the last 2 or 3 months, and I can't remember who he was talking to, but he
mhm,
said you ought to play every sport.
mhm.
You ought to encourage them to play because you get something from every sport that helps you in the other sports.
That's so true. And I've heard orthopedic surgeons who do sports medicine say that you don't want to just do one sport because of overuse injuries, like a pitcher,
Right.
etc. Now, going back to your grandson, is he, if he's not yet, we got to get him on Coach Corbin's radar. It's never too
He
soon.
went he went to Coach Corbin's baseball camp last summer, and
Good,
I went
good.
with him, and what a great experience just to hear Coach Corbin talk to those
Hmm.
kids is
Hmm.
worth the trip. So yeah, I hope that we can get him on his radar, and I hope he turns out to be that kind of player.
Well, good. So we can get more season tickets because I.
That's right.
But Roy, let's talk a little bit about your junior high going into high school years. You're developing as an athlete. You're playing all these sports. At what point do you remember this? At what point did it kind of blossom in your mind? I think I want to play on the college level. I think I want to play football somewhere in college. And you're getting feedback maybe from your coaches or from your performances. When did all that start to take shape for you?
Probably in the eighth grade. My junior high was a 7 through 9 junior high, like a lot of them were back then. But going back to Mac and Wasser Brown, they went on to college, and I'll have to say, football was always my first love. Tough guy, whatever you want to call it. I love to hit. Thus, I played defense in
Hmm.
college, and I guess I never really had any thought of playing anything else in college but football. Now, as
Hmm.
I've gotten older, I look back, I thought, man, I might should have played baseball too. But I was so dedicated and focused on football, that was what I wanted to do. I I had really good speed. I ran a 4.55 40. I didn't have the stride to hold it in the 100, but Preston Brown, great receiver that was in my class,
Hmm.
I used to guard him every day, but
Hmm.
he ran a 9 100. We were about the same in the 40, but if he
Hmm.
ever got even with you, he was gone. So
Yeah.
you can't do it anymore. But my best tactic was beating them up before they got off the line of scrimmage.
But there's nothing that will make you better than going up against somebody who may be a little faster or a little
Oh,
stronger or
yeah.
just more physical. But gosh, that must have been, and I know we're kind of jumping a little bit, but that must have been a challenge for you every day that you were practicing, and it made you better at the same time.
Absolutely. And it's a challenge that I wanted. And
Hmm.
Preston knew I was going to come at him hard, and he
Hmm.
was going to do the same thing to me. And a great guy. Preston was from Maplewood High School in Nashville, went on and played some with the New England Patriots.
Yeah, yeah,
And when we had a lot of good players, and I'm skipping around a little bit, but our starters were as good as anybody. Depth was a problem for us, and still continues to be, of
yeah.
getting second teamers or that are as good as the first teamers. I
Mhm.
remember, and I'm jumping everywhere. We played Alabama in Tuscaloosa one year, and that's
Mhm.
when they ran the two tight ends and the full set backfield, of
Mhm.
course.
Mhm.
And so I playing corner. I was 1 yard outside, 5 yards deep. I played against three different tight ends that day, and you couldn't tell the difference between any of them.
Mhm. A lot of interchangeable parts for them back then. Roy, did you always were you always being groomed once you got to Vanderbilt to play defensive back or returner of some sort? How did it evolve to the positions that you ended up playing?
Well, there again, I don't want to blow my own horn, but I think the toughness and mental toughness that I possessed was a big part of that. And I played free safety in the beginning behind Brenard Wilson. Great
Oh,
free
nice. Yeah.
safety. Went on and played several years for the Eagles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we had great secondaries. They were top notch. Reggie Calvin was one corner. Bernard Wilson was free safety.
Mm.
Ronnie Myrick, which was in my class, was strong safety. And when Bernard moved on, we needed another corner. We had Bugs Jordan on one side, so I went and played left corner. And
Mm.
Jim Sherman, another classmate in my class, filled in at free safety, and Ronnie Myrick was still there as the strong safety.
That's a strong group right there in and of itself, even after Brenard graduated.
Absolutely.
What was you? I knew this about you before tonight, but it's been reaffirmed about that mental and physical strength, toughness. Where does that come from? Because that's not a lot of times, Roy, that's not taught. That's inherent, that's built into your DNA sometimes. Where
And
did that come from with you?
I will say that it was not taught, but I loved taking on that personality, I guess. And when I was in a game, I want to say I kind of just glazed over, blocked everything else out, and just focused on
Mm-hmm.
making a play or something. And I started young, I was talking about Mack and Watson. I was one of the early ones to get in the weight room. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to throw another name out there that you probably never heard of, but his name's Lois Grooms.
Okay.
He was 6'5", 240-ish. He played at Tennessee Tech. I
Mm-hmm.
was in the eighth grade, I guess, when he was at Tech. We became close friends. He went on and had a very nice pro career at defensive end for the New Orleans Saints.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Lois we had a weight facility like Planet Fitness. It was called something else, of course, then.
Right.
And I was a member since the 7th or 8th grade, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd work out with Lois. He took the interest, I guess, in me to let me work out with him and do those kind of things and develop. And he loved to deer hunt, which I've always loved to hunt. And we'd go deer hunting together. He came to get me one Saturday morning because I couldn't drive, I don't guess, if I was in the 8th or 9th grade. But he came to the front door and I opened the front door, and my mother happened to get up and walk around the corner and scared her to death. She told me later, said, I didn't think he was going to fit through the front door. But
Wow. That's a
Lois
big
was
dude.
really a good person and a good guy. And like I say, being 6'5" or 240, whatever it is, he ran a 4.5 40, like a lot of pros.
Wow. That's crazy. Crazy athleticism.
And then going on to when I did come to Vanderbilt, and I think one of the articles that Diane sent you was some of the strength stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we tested, and I don't know if I was a freshman or a sophomore, but I played at about 165 pounds, and I benched 325. The only other person that benched more than that was Mike Birdsong, which was an offensive lineman.
Wow. Just
At that
inherent
time.
strength?
That would have been in 1976.
Was that just inherent strength?
I worked at it.
Mm-hmm. Man. When you got to the Vanderbilt campus, even though it was only, hour and a half or so from home, did you ever get homesick? Or did you immediately just kind of feel like that was the right place for you? Because there's always a transition in there. But how was
Oh,
yours?
there's always a transition. And it's very important with the people you connect with that's in your class, like Mark Matlock and
Mhm.
Bart White and those guys. But as a freshman, I mean, you come out of high school and you're more than likely the stud, or you're the best player on the field. But when you go to college, especially any SEC school, they're all as good as you or better. And it's kind of an awakening as a freshman when you go on the field and you see all these guys that are as strong or stronger and bigger and faster. And homesick's not the right word, but in my case, it wasn't. I never did get homesick, but you better make your mind up. You're either going to play or fold. And I can remember, once you become an upperclassman, the freshman, you always want to say fresh meat or whatever. And there was a defensive back, and I won't call his name, but came in the locker room after the practice, and he's just sitting on the bench shaking his head. I said, "Man, what's wrong?" He said, "Man," said, "I thought I'd been hit hard before." Said, "Every time y'all hit me, Dave's the hardest I've ever been hit in my life."
Mm.
He was gone the next day. Well, you
Wow.
never know what somebody's going through or how they're feeling or
Yeah.
reacting. And I think you need some upper class, some support for the
Mhm.
freshmen coming in, because like I say, it's an awakening. I don't care who you are.
Roy, what was your welcome to the SEC moment? Was it a
Oh, Lord.
practice, a game, a conversation? Do you remember having a pivotal moment in your career where it's like, I'm not home anymore. This is big time.
Are you talking about a moment that kind of hurt my feelings?
You share whatever you want to share.
Oh, Lord. We were playing the University of Arkansas. Lou Holtz was the head coach.
Uh-huh.
I was playing corner, and they had a receiver that was about 6'5". I think his last name was Farrell. And I had him blanketed, I mean, covered up on a deep out and up. And I went up, and he went up, and he went up above me and got it. And I don't think he scored, but I was thinking, how in the did he do that? That was kind of like my wake up, like, hey, you're gonna have to prevent this somehow, because
Mhm.
them 6'5" guys could jump and they could run. But
Wow.
the other one that comes to mind is playing Auburn in Nashville.
Mhm.
They had Cribbs, William Andrews, and James Brooks
Mhm.
all at the same time.
Mhm.
William Andrews, which went on to the Atlanta Falcons, was Rookie of the Year,
Mhm.
consistently ran over middle linebackers.
Mhm.
And they played a lot of tight end where I'm 1 yard off, 5 yard deep. Every every time I hit William Andrews, I thought, what in the hell have I got a hold of? It didn't matter. If you hit him high, he'd kill you. If you hit him in the legs, he'd kill you too. So I'd get him down, but it was rough. He was much a man.
He was country strong.
Yeah.
What gave you the most joy about either being a student at Vanderbilt or being a football player or just being affiliated at the time with the university?
Well, I still have a lot of pride for Vanderbilt University, and I
Mhm.
have a lot of pride, proud of myself for going there,
Mhm.
graduating. Getting in Vanderbilt can be a tough deal. I know their standards are high and they get the pick of whatever they want. But with the support that the athletic program gave us, and I'm sure does so still, or even more so, if you'll go to class and apply yourself, you can make the grades and graduate from Vanderbilt. So the proud, it was great running onto the field before the games, and the kids are hanging over the stadium was full then, and they just want to touch you. Or after the game, you throw them your wristband or whatever you had. Those are great moments. And going to like picture day, the kids wanting your autograph, that really makes you feel special.
It really does. And I've rarely brought this up, but just because it doesn't come to mind, it's so true. Picture day. It's a beginning, at least for my years, it's probably been this way forever. It's one of the very first practices or a week or two before the first game. and it's opening the stadium to all the fans to just intermingle, get pictures, get autographs, and just kind of hang out with the team, which is not, that's one of the few occasions throughout a year that you have that kind of immediate access, if you will.
Right.
And I just, everybody has a little different, I guess, reaction to it. Some guys don't want to be around and don't want to get their picture, autograph, any of that. And then other guys are just cannot get enough of it.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting to see because it's a lot of those personality traits will start to come out. Because I vividly remember seeing my teammates. Some of mine are like, "Where are you going? Come on back over. Let's get another picture." That kind of thing.
Right.
But Roy, let's kind of pivot to off the field for a few minutes. Let's
Okay.
talk about the academics coming out of Cookeville and adjusting to the academic life at Vanderbilt, which we all know is so rigorous. Did you find that it was did you have a big struggle or did you take to it pretty easily for your studies?
Any kid that goes to college, and I don't know if it's still the same way, but I would tell them learn how to write a good essay.
Mm-hmm.
When I was there, every test was an essay, and you've got the beginning paragraph, the body, and your closing statement. I
Mm-hmm.
learned how to write a good essay
Mm-hmm.
from the start. That was a big awakening as well. But there again, the support, I had tutors. There's no shame in needing tutors, and if you need one, Vanderbilt, the athletic department, they provide it for you. And there again, if you just, apply yourself, it can be done.
I think what's so beautiful about the current days or the current times in the athletics department is they've got that Ingram Center for Student Athlete Success. And you're so right. They have a safety net put in place. If you need tutoring, if you need mental health care, if whatever it is, it seems like you may need off the field. I'm so thankful that that program and the Ingram family helped to establish such a wonderful asset, wonderful resource for our student athletes.
Absolutely, Bernard. I want to interject also that, and I still feel this way, from being a former Vanderbilt student and athlete, I am still welcomed in the athletic family
Mhm.
by Coach Lee and Candace Rice. And, they invite us and encourage us to come around, and they make you feel like you're still a part. I know a lot of maybe the bigger schools and universities, once you're gone, they forget about you. But that's not the way with Vanderbilt. I think they hold another standard there, and I'm proud of that.
I do echo what you say, Roy. It hadn't always been that way. We know with different coaches and administrations, but I think Coach Lee and athletics director Candace Lee and our Chancellor Deermeyer, they have changed that culture. They have gone overboard, excuse me, about welcoming student athletes, alums to all come back and feel part of the program. Because I've heard Coach Lee, just like you have, Coach Lee says this is our program, meaning the alums, and he wants us to feel as welcome there as any place.
He has, and he's made a really strong effort to make sure you know that. I've got Coach Lee's cell phone, and I
Mm-hmm.
may text him something, hey, so and so, great job. And I'm telling you, within 5 minutes, he'll respond.
He
And
sure
that
does.
that makes you feel good.
Roy, we got some Commodores in the house. I want to tell you who's here with us besides Matlock. We got Dwayne Jones, Heidi Gray Breeding, Eugene Keenan, OJ Fleming. There's been a few others who have rolled through, but thank you all to spending some time with us tonight with Roy Williams out of Cookeville. Grew up in Cookeville, came back to Cookeville. Now Cookeville's home. But before we get to what's going on with you these days, I want to stick into the football years. That 76, 77, 78 seasons for you. Now, the fall of 76, that was your first fall on campus.
Yes.
How much playing time did you get?
Well, I was on the kickoff team.
Mm-hmm.
As far as actual on the field playing, there was very little, like a lot of freshmen.
Well, sure. You had some excellent
77,
players ahead of you.
77, I played a lot,
Mm-hmm.
returned kickoffs with Preston Brown. Uh, 78, I started at corner, still was a kick returner. Then the spring of 78, going through spring practice with Coach McIntyre, I tore my knee up. So I
That
had
was
surgery. I had
so that would have
surgery.
been the spring of 79 going into your senior year. If
That
you
you're
played,
right. You're right. Spring of
yeah,
79. That'd be right.
you played your
So,
first 3 years or those freshman,
yeah,
sophomore, junior years for Coach Panko, 76, 78, and 8. So the spring of 79, we have Coach Mack has come in.
that's right. And I tear my knee up in spring practice, get it operated on, rehab, and I wasn't quite ready, I guess, when the fall came along. And I went ahead and graduated. I didn't redshirt, and that would lead into why I did that and leading into my business career that we'll talk about in a minute.
Now, was that a pinky Lipscomb surgery?
That was a pinky Lipscomb surgery.
Yeah, Dr. Lipscomb was still the Vanderbilt, I guess, athletics department orthopedic surgeon when I was there in the late 80s. I'm not sure when he retired, but I know that there had to have been hundreds of Vanderbilt athletes for as long as he was there for him to have operated on them.
Oh, no question. There's no telling how many he
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. Now, I wouldn't have brought this up except for your bride told me to ask you about a particular dust up between you and Coach Pancoast. So we've got to go there, Roy, for a minute or two and tell us what happened.
Well, it was, I think, the next to the last game, my freshman year, and we were going to the University of Cincinnati.
Mhm.
And during that week, in passing Coach Pancoast in practice or after practice, he said, "Hey, looks like you need a haircut." I said, "Okay, Coach." I didn't think that much about it, but that was like on a Wednesday, and we were leaving on a Friday. So we go to Cincinnati and do whatever when we get there, and we're at the motel, and we had a chaplain at that time, and he was doing something after dinner, and it wasn't mandatory to go to it. I didn't go to it. There was a misunderstanding. Anyway, Matlock, probably one of them, comes to my room and says, "Hey, Coach Pancoast kicked you off the team, said you disobeyed it." So it was a misunderstanding between myself and Coach Pancoast about, I guess, when I needed to get a haircut and when that actually happened. And then I don't know what all went on at that meeting. Well, that was obviously quite a shock. And I was very upset because I didn't think I'd done anything, but I will sing praises out to David Culley again. I was leaving. I was going out the motel to the interstate, and I was coming home. And David Culley, which never seen him say a bad word or try to hurt anybody, but I believe he would have hit me that night. He blocked the door and would not let me leave. And he probably saved my life. And I've told David that many times.
Wow.
So, okay, we come back to, of course, campus, and semester's over, and I come back for the spring semester to finish the year, and Coach Pancoast and I have a meeting. I think he actually reached out in January or maybe 1st of February and asked me to come back, and that we made up and got everything straightened out, and I'm very glad we did. Coach Pancoast remained a pretty close friend of mine all through his business years later in life, which he passed away a couple of years ago. And I still think a lot of Coach Pancoast, and I was close with his family too. He had 3 daughters, and I actually dated one of them a little bit, and they were just a great family.
Well, it's an incredibly interesting story and turn of events. and I think it speaks to your character and to Coach Pancoast's ability to deal with it. The fact that y'all were able to make up or come back together with heads, coming to an agreement and then remaining friends after that. I think that just speaks volumes because Roy, I don't know how often that would necessarily play out that way.
Well, and like I said before, you never know what somebody's going through. Coach Pancoast probably under a lot of pressure, and maybe somebody else said something and he made a rash, bad choice, maybe in my opinion. But like I said, I love Coach Pancoast, would do anything in the world for him. And I am glad that we did get together and work things out.
And thank you, David Cully.
Absolutely.
And speaking of thank yous, Terry Potter says to tell you.
Oh, Teapot, the Goodlettsville Flash, man.
That's right.
Hey, Teapot.
Matlock says Pancoast made men out of many of y'all.
Well, there you go.
Joey, aka Flavia Smith, is in the house with us tonight.
Hey, what's up, Flav?
So thank you, fellas, for dropping by. We've got Roy Williams. Roy, give me an update on the score. What do we got going on the baseball game now?
Well, I hadn't actually looked up. Let me see if
it was like 8-0 in the third.
Right, they're in between innings. Okay. I've been involved here, so I hadn't really watched
it. If it pops back up,
they're in a commercial, I'll give you an updated score here in a minute.
You have that basically a career-ending injury in the spring of '79. You graduate, but during that time period, I can only imagine a lot is going through your head. Of course, you could have redshirted. You can come back for a fifth year. You could have graduated like you did. But my first in a line of questions, Roy, how long did it take you to get to process and to get through the athletic competitive side of you to say, this is my new path in life. This is my new reality. I'm not going to play my senior year. I'm not going to redshirt. So my playing days are done. Because that's a tough transition for any athlete to know that injury has now caused the end of their career.
And it was very difficult, absolutely very difficult, especially that fall. Of course, I was involved at practice and at the games but not being able to be on the field with my teammates was very tough. I had played quite a bit, and I wasn't done, but I felt like, I guess, maybe I needed to be. Back then, and it wasn't Peaky Lipscomb's fault, but the theory was when you had total reconstruction, they put you in a cast for 6 weeks. Well, that's probably the worst thing you can do because you get all the adhesions and you have to break those adhesions. And he gave me a good knee. To this day, I've not had knee issues other than the flexibility of it. I still can't bend it all the way. And that all stems from being in a cast for 6 weeks. So I didn't know if I could ever come back and be the player I was, number one. Number two, I grew up in a working family, like a lot of people in small towns. And it was expected of me, I guess, to come back and join the family business. And why I was in a hurry to do that, I don't know. If I had it to do over again, I would have stayed in school. But that was something, I guess, that made it a little easier to step away because I knew there was a career and a good job waiting for me when I did get out. So that's what I ended up doing.
Well, let's kind of pivot to that for a few minutes. We've got a few more minutes before we get out of here. But talk a little bit about the family business and what was expected of you and what did you undertake when you got out of school?
Well, my father and my grandfather started a hardware store on the square in 1939.
Wow.
It evolved into an electrical and plumbing distributorship. In 1963, they moved about 300 yards off the square, Bernard, and they told him he was crazy for moving so far out of town. It's now the busiest street, the main thoroughfare of Cookeville, going 2 miles down the road to I-40, which was just being finished in 1963. So very successful electrical and plumbing distributorship. When I graduated, we were more, I guess, focused and was really good at the residential side of the business. Took us more into the commercial arena, which we still do and is very, very successful doing that. I brought the computer age, even though I don't know how to work these computers today, but we used to handwrite.
Roy, that was between us. Now everybody knows.
We used to handwrite tickets, and we'd have our customers and have a big price book that was about this thick, and I'd price tickets at home. But we have a very large lighting showroom, and it's been very good to me, I guess, to say the least. And now I have two sons that have come into the business, and they're running the business. I opened a branch in 2005 in Nashville and one in Columbia, Tennessee in 2008. And my kids, when my sons came in the business, I opened a branch in McMinnville, Tennessee, and then I opened one in Crossville, Tennessee.
Wow.
In 2017, I sold Nashville and Columbia to my partner. My thinking when I went to Nashville in 2005 was that I had the connections and relationships with the lines that were out there and the reps and financial backing. And I've looked to partner with someone in the Nashville market, and I partnered with a great guy that was one of the top outside salesmen in Nashville. He bought me out of the Nashville and Columbia store in 2017. And then, like I said, when Lee and David came in the business, I had my hands full, but with them, we went to McMinnville, we went to Crossville, very successful. In 2020, we had a couple of the best years we'd ever had. And I said, well, we had a meeting, and I said, well, we need to open in new markets or test the market. And by that, I mean, hey, let's see if somebody's interested in buying us. Business or employees. I mean, it's getting harder every day to find good quality people. And we did that. And there was one company that just really stood out. And we talked to other business owners that had sold to them. And the philosophy that I went to Nashville with, they have that philosophy because they want their managers to have skin in the game as well, which my partner in Nashville did as well. So we ended up selling to Win Supply. Lee, my two sons, Lee and David, they still own 30% of the Cookeville business, and I still own the building and the property, but they pretty much leave you alone and let you run it like you've been running it. So many times a business will buy somebody and they'll get rid of everybody that helped make the business and ruin it. But that hadn't been the case with them, and it's just been really a good thing for me. I still go in 4 days a week. I take Fridays off, but it was a good thing for Lee and David as well. They're doing great with this company, and the beauty of it is they don't have to worry about a transition plan. When they get ready to walk away, they sell their shares back to Win Supply and walk away. So I think it's been a win-win all the way around.
That's an incredible 4 generations.
4 generations. That is very proud of that.
That's fantastic. Roy, thank you for sharing some of that
history. Diane's showing me here the baseball scores 12-4. What inning is that? 6th?
Yeah, 5th.
5th inning.
Nice.
Well, 5th, 12-4 Vandy.
Well, good. They're on their way. Roy, that's a fantastic family legacy. I know you're very proud of what.
Absolutely. I am very proud of that.
That's fantastic.
You
Well,
know, a
let
lot of businesses don't make it past the second generation.
You're right, right. Barely the first. And I think where I want to go for the closing couple of minutes, and I appreciate you sharing what you have to this point. And you really kind of touched on a lot of highlights here. But if you were to address high school kids like at Cookeville High School, the ones who are interested in going into playing whatever their sport may be on the next level, whether it's D1, 2, 3, doesn't matter, next level. What is it about your time when you played in the 70s? What kind of lessons, what kind of things that are still applicable to the kids today that were applicable when we were kids back in our day from playing team sports in college?
And to try to tell them how to be successful.
Yeah, just from your perspective, your experiences. Yeah.
I think my advice to them would be to outwork the next guy because, if everybody's working out from 6 to 8, get there at 5. Because if you get an extra hour of practice or weightlifting or speed drills or whatever it is, after a year's time, you've got an extra hour every day. You've got however many hours that is, it's enough to really make a difference where you will show that when you're going head to head with them.
I think nothing replaces hard work and dedication. It
That's
doesn't matter what decade, doesn't matter what sport, doesn't matter really anything in life, whether it's the type of work that your 4 generations of family have done, or it's playing pickup basketball on the weekends at the Y.
right.
There's nothing that replaces that hard work and dedication.
I think it makes a difference.
It certainly gets the attention of those who make decisions. That's for sure, like the coaches. Roy, before we get out of here, Jimmy Arnold says to tell you hello.
Oh, Jim, he's a good one now. He's a good one.
He is. We had a fantastic night a few weeks ago. He drove over or drove down and got to spend some great time around that fire at the back of Kenny Cole's house. That was a
Oh, yeah.
fun evening.
Jim's a unique individual, and I'm sure he's got some good stories from being in the pros.
He sure shared a few that night. They were fantastic.
Well, I
Well,
hope we do this next year and I'm able to be there.
well, you're gonna have to set that travel schedule up based on Kenny's. You guys will have to get in touch with each other.
Well, in all fairness, we've been working on this trip for 10 months. It takes a while to set that stuff up.
I have no doubt. For those of you who don't know or didn't see in our group, Roy and Diane had a fantastic trip to New Zealand and Australia.
Sydney, Australia.
And scroll down in the pictures and you'll see the trophy that Roy was able to. I guess, is it being shipped home or has it come home
Yeah,
yet?
it's going to be shipped home, and Diane's going to post some more Facebook pictures
Oh,
because
please.
she had a great kill as well. So that'll be coming up. I told her she needs to
Oh,
get those on there.
can't wait. Can't wait to see those. But Roy, it has been my pleasure getting to know you this past year. And this conversation is it's just exactly what I was hoping it would be tonight.
Well, thank you very much. And it's been awesome. I enjoyed my time with you too when we were visiting in Las Vegas. So maybe we can do that again on a road trip this fall. And all my buddies that got on and said hello, I appreciate it. I love all of you.
Very good. And guys, just keep coming back on Tuesdays. We've got Commodores lined up now through into June, into the summer. So just
Okay.
take a look at the lineup coming up from all different decades and time periods. And just remember, anchor down.
I'll be looking in. Thanks.